and welcome to this episode of the Spiced In Podcast. My name is Jacob, and today we're talking all about the Mandalorian Gallery episodes 5 and 6. But before we get to that, let's just talk about our news for the week. We have actually quite a bit of stuff to talk about. We have the From a Certain Point of View Empire Strikes Back novel announced. That was announced a couple days ago now. And we are getting a writer's list, I believe, today on Monday, if I remember correctly. But for those of you who don't know, they released a novel called From a Certain Point of View for the 40th anniversary of A New Hope a couple years back. It was 40 short stories written by different authors from, different points of view. They would be following minor characters in the background, creatures, stuff like that. Let's take the point of view of a character you wouldn't normally think about and write a little short story about that person or character or creature. So they announced they're doing the same for Empire Strikes Back. Of course, this year was the 40th anniversary of that book as well, or of that movie as well. So we'll be getting that, and I have a few things I'd like to see. I imagine we're getting a Wampa story. I would also love to see a Lobot story. If you read the Lando miniseries comic, I think Lobot became an incredibly interesting character out of that. And I would love to see some more from his perspective, what he's doing during the Imperial occupation of Bespin. I think that'd be really cool. And in addition, I think it'd be cool to see something from Dak, like, Luke's gunner on the battle at Hoth that dies, really quickly into the battle. I'd love to just see what's his morning like that. What was his morning before he got shot? How did he get to that point where he felt like he could take the Empire on all by himself? I want to know a little bit from Dak's point of view. So I think those would be cool chapters. But the first book, I'll be honest, for a lot of people, I've not read it personally yet. But I know a lot of people. It was kind of divisive because it makes sense when you're writing 40 short stories. You're not gonna love every one of them, and I heard some of them were pretty rough to get through. So we'll see what happens here. But either way, it's always good to be getting more books to read. But the next bit of news, there was a new galaxy map that was released. It was part of the Galaxy's Edge Traveler Guide to Batuu, but it shows a full galaxy map. It's been a few years, I feel like, since we've gotten a more up-to-date one. So that's kind of cool. You can see the different regions of the galaxy, the core, deep core, the colonies, which we talked about in our Rise of Skywalker novelization conversation, the rims, the expansion region, all those different areas of the galaxy and all the different systems we've come to know and love are displayed on this map, and it's quite nice to have. So we got that. Then I talked about it last week, but the Jedi Temple Challenge launched this past Wednesday with Ahmed Best. And I watched the first episode. It was pretty fun. Definitely a kids-oriented show, but it was enjoyable. I think anyone can watch it. It's appropriate for all ages. And, I think they're like 15, 20 minutes long, but it was pretty enjoyable. We got to see Master Kelleran Beck, played by Best, and then in addition, there was few droids. Sam Witwer was there as the voice of the dark side, and it was a nice little episode. I think it would have been cool because in the series they go on his Jedi Star Cruiser. I think it would have been cool to replace that with the ship from Clone Wars, the Gathering arc, and use that same droid instead of the protocol droid they threw in there. But it doesn't. It's minor stuff. I think it was still, I don't think it really detracted from the overall enjoyment of the series as a whole. So it's nice to have. And they'll be releasing, I think, regularly on Wednesdays. There's 10 episodes in the first season. So that was that. The next bit of news, we're going into some gaming news. So Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which is actually, believe it or not, it's a mobile game. I've been playing on the YouTube channel, but believe it or not, it is now currently the only actively supported Star Wars official game out there. Battlefront 2 is done being supported, and I think this is it for now. So, there's also obviously Fallen Order, but I don't think we're getting any new content at this point for that game. I think it's just patches when need be. So yeah, really the only real activated or actively supported game is Star Wars Galaxy Heroes, but it's a collector RPG, and they just announced one of the biggest, most anticipated characters, Jedi Knight Luke. Luke from Episode 6, that is. We've had Farm Boy Luke from Episode 4. We had Commander Luke Skywalker from Empire. This is the first real Jedi Luke character, and it's been someone that's been looked forward to for a long time. There's a lot of controversy regarding it, but I'm not going to talk about it in here. If you're not a Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes fan, odds are you don't really care. But it's big news, and we're getting more information. They sent out like a little puzzle game over the weekend for this announcement. The fans figured it out. They solved the puzzle. We know we're getting Jedi Luke. We're just getting the official full announcement on Monday. So, in addition, on Monday, we're getting some more gaming news. This is huge. Star Wars Squadrons. We're getting a trailer on 11 a.m. on Monday. So by the time you listen to this, you've probably already seen it. So you will know more than me. But I guess I'll speculate for whatever, But anyways, it's the Project Maverick we were talking about a couple months ago. Originally, it was I believe it was leaked on like PlayStation Europe store or something like that, and it was leaked again on the Xbox store. But what we know, it's Squadrons. I think it's supposed to come out this year, and it is a Star Wars space combat game. We don't know much beyond that. The key art, it's only Empire and Rebel characters and ships. I don't know if it's specifically going to be based in that era or if that's just the art they chose for it. Who knows if we'll have, access to Resistance ships or prequel era ships. But right now we know we have Empire and Rebel ships. We got there's X-Wings, Y-Wings, U-Wings, A-Wings, TIE Fighters, a TIE Interceptor, TIE Bombers. All that was in there. That's what we know so far. So I'm really excited. This is a game I really am going to be up for. What I want to see, though, I want to see HOTAS support. That's flight stick support. That Battlefront 2 gameplay does not have that. I want to see a campaign, a story-driven campaign. And I think an addition, something maybe not as widely desired, but I think it would be really cool to have like a race mode, a la like the Resistance show. They have basically drag race X-Wings kind of style ships. I would love to see something like that, just like a side mode where you can tool out your ship and go up and race other people. So I think that would be a lot of fun. I'm really hoping it's not just going to be basically like a Battlefront 2 ship mode repackaged, because I honestly, it was fun, but I feel like it left a lot to be desired. So I played a decent amount of Elite Dangerous, and I played like maybe like 100 hours, which is to say in Elite Dangerous that I still don't know how to play the game. Like, it's a monstrous learning curve, but I really got the hang of and really started enjoying all the flight controls. So I'd love to see something just a little bit more complicated in the Squadrons game. You could even have like a basic control mode and an advanced control mode, so the people that aren't into that kind of thing can, basically just treat it like they're flying a plane with two joysticks and, they got their triggers and that's all they need. But it would be cool to have something a little bit more in depth for those people that want it. But I believe it's supposed to be released in August is what I was hearing. Again, by the time you hear what I'm saying, you'll have already watched the trailer most likely, and you'll know more than me. So I'm looking forward to watching that on Monday, and can't wait to get my pre-order going on that. But I think that's all the news we have going on right now. So that means we get to hop into our main meat of the episode, which is the gallery episodes 5 and 6, the practical effects in the process. So the practical effects was, I think, is the episode I probably wanted the most out of this whole thing. I actually just watched the Empire of Dreams documentary over the weekend, and it really got me in a mood for rewatching this episode of the gallery and talking about it. If you haven't watched that documentary, it's 2.5 hours on Disney Plus, and it goes through the entire process of how George created the original trilogy, and it's incredibly interesting if you're a Star Wars fan. Just the creation of ILM and all the things they went through, really being the innovator of film technology at that time. It was really cool, and we see a lot of the footage that they had in this documentary shown again in The Mandalorian. So it was awesome to, go watch that documentary, and then I'm actually, they're just making passing references to some of the stuff in the gallery episode, but I know now what it all is referencing. So that was really cool. If you like this episode and you got 2.5 hours to spare, go watch that documentary because it's really amazing. They kind of talked about the Queel Ugnaught suit. I honestly thought it was CG. I didn't think that so much went into it, but basically you have Misty Rosas, who's an actress, underneath the suit. So they have like a mask that goes over her, the Queel face and everything like that. And then there are puppeteers that are controlling her face, basically. So you have one that's controlling her mouth and one that's controlling her eyes and eyebrows. So, the lines were pre-recorded by Nick Nolte, but she is, basically has the face over her that she cannot control, and speakers that are, blasting out her lines. So it's a really interesting dynamic where you have all these creators and these actors and that are all working in tandem, but really don't have full communication with each other. They just have to work on like an instinct and get to know each other. So that was really cool. Something interesting that came out of it, Deborah Chow. I've heard this story before that I even watched this show, but it's cool to see her talk about it. She was saying how Werner Herzog told her at one point that they need to leave the Baby Yoda puppet in over CGing it, and told her not to be a coward about it. And the really cool thing about this is Jon Favreau was saying that even when they had to CG Baby Yoda, where that was their only option, they would not let the CG exceed the capabilities of the puppet. So, like, let's say, for instance, the puppet, hypothetically, let's say the puppet can't wiggle its nose. We're not going to have the CG version wiggle its nose because that's breaking that immersion. You're trying to have this seamless product where you can't tell if it's CG or a puppet. So you're not going to have one exceed the other. So I thought that was really interesting. They also kind of like talked about the whole iterative process, the design process for Baby Yoda, how it went from sketch to puppet. And, again, having watched that Empire Dreams documentary, I think it was a very similar process for Yoda itself, how they like really took a while trying to get that design right and nailed down before they were satisfied with it. There's so much that goes into controlling the puppet. They had 5 different puppeteers on the team. One did eyes, one did body and body movements and the head, one did ears and mouth, and another on body and arms, plus like an extra puppeteer that would rotate in and out. So a lot of people going into making this one seamless product at the end. And they also talked a little bit about IG-11. One of their creators decided to make basically a large stand-in puppet for lighting reference, but it became so much more when they realized how much it could do. So they would have it in certain shots, just full up. Just here's our stand-in, and it worked pretty well. I think it looked a little ridiculous at times when he's like spinning around super fast and everything and doing all that. But really, I don't think it really harmed my suspension of disbelief whatsoever. Another cool thing, they talked about the blurgs. So blurgs originally were from the old Ewok TV shows, and at one they managed to get some stop motion action with the blurgs in there with one of the original artists. I thought that was super neat. And another cool thing they talked about was the blasters. So this actually wasn't something that was super covered in the Empire Dreams documentary, but for the blasters, what Lucas did, since they were on such a shoestring budget, is they would rent like World War Era II guns, and since they were renting, they could only make certain modifications that could be undone more or less. So the designer for the blaster in this episode, or in the series for The Mandalorian, took a lot of inspiration from that and tried to make, even though they're not constrained to the exact same set of rules, his design is trying to mimic that aesthetic. I thought, everything they're doing is trying to make it fit in that universe. The last thing I'll really talk about is the Razor Crest and ships in general. They made a Razor Crest miniature, just kind of at first it's kind of for fun. They're gonna make a few little shots with it, use it as a lighting reference. And Jon Favreau even joked around saying that he learned from Guillermo del Toro that if you make a miniature, you just get to put it in your house when you're done. So I'm pretty jealous. I didn't get on a Star Wars production apparently. So they end up actually using it for quite a bit more shots. So that was cool. And they also, one of the ILM guys, he decided as kind of a side fun project, he compiled a style guide of just how ships moved in the original trilogy. And a lot of it, again, was constrained by that technology. The original Millennium Falcon was 6 feet wide, so you can only have a camera so far back from that before you're losing your field. So you're only allowed to do certain shots with that, and you can't take this 6 foot Millennium Falcon and do like crazy spins and tricks with it. It's like unwieldy and it would be incredibly difficult to pull off. So, and especially in New Hope, a lot of the shots were more simple. But yeah, he compiled this style guide just to see how the ships moved. And they also talked about how he did something similar when they set up the movie. And they talked more about it in Empire Dreams, where the pacing was kind of hard to nail down. The ILM guys weren't really nailing what he wanted as far as the shot pacing. It was a lot more slow. So he sent them these World War II film reels. They were like, I believe it was like the Battle of Britain or something like that. And they were just World War II airplanes dogfighting. And they almost did like shot for shot recreations of some of these scenes. And that really helped the pacing of the film. But the last thing I want to touch on, just with the ship movement, is something that was interesting, is to give that sense of movement. We're not having the ship fly super fast. What they're doing is they're doing like subtle movements with the ships, and then they'll take the star field, the background, and just pull that in the direction they're going. So it gives that real sense of motion, and that's something they did on The Mandalorian as well. So all of this super cool. This was definitely probably my favorite episode that we've talked about so far. The next episode, The Process, this was a little bit less interesting for me. It was, definitely cool to watch. Not as cool for me to talk about. It's really just the creative process. Something super important is Favreau was talking about at the very beginning, how he didn't want to be inspired by Star Wars. He's trying to fit the universe, but he wanted to be inspired by the things that inspired George Lucas. So that's like Kurosawa, samurai films, old spaghetti western kind of style films. And so that's what he tried to more mimic rather than just being more Star Wars. And I think that probably lends itself to why this feels so right and so good. Say what you will about all the other movies, but this really, it fits the universe so well. And I think, just trying not to be Star Wars, trying to be your own thing, made it a little bit more probably creatively freeing, and gave us gave us the Mandalorian, which we love so much. But then when they just walk through the whole process, so you have your ideation phase, your writing, then they did storyboards, and then they went into animatics, so kind of just animated storyboards more or less, and then they went to previs, and they talked a lot about previs, and it was more or less like really rough shot 3D animation of the scenes they were going to do, and how they used that as a reference because they didn't have as much time on the shots. When they were on, they tried to do a ton of pre-production, so when they actually went into filming, they could bang it out really quickly because they didn't have the time that you would get on a feature film. And Deborah Chow, who has done a lot of TV, would say normally I'd be in for a week or two before we start filming, but for this I was in for 2 months before we even started shooting. So that leads you to be able to be so much more efficient in your process. It was something that was really important. The previs wasn't ever done before to this level for a TV show, but because of although the volume we talked about earlier in one of our previous episodes is such an amazing revolution, and also you have a lot of limitations where if you don't have everything planned out, it's gonna suck. You can't just go wing it in there. You can't just go in. It's we'll see what happens, because you need those pre-created environments for the volume to work, for you get that lighting, all the benefits of the volume that you can't get that without that pre-planning. So previs was such an important part of the whole process. So it was really cool to see this new style of filming. And like I said in our episode about the volume, I hope that if other studios try and replicate this, or if they try and take this and learn from it, that they don't do it improperly, because that's what we had. That's what we had when CG first started coming out. You had great things like Jurassic Park, but then you also had really terrible, awful movies that don't age well because they didn't know what they were doing. Jurassic Park still looks great today, and that's because they knew what they were doing. They didn't. The dinosaurs, a lot of times they're hidden in shadow. You're taking advantage of the fact that you don't need as much detail, and the light is going to make it look bad. So hopefully, if people try and replicate this in other films and other TV shows, they don't abuse it and just try and use it. They don't look at it as a shortcut to everything. They look at it as another tool that they can use and make great film from, but they need to put in the real proper effort. So, yeah, I definitely, episode 6 not my favorite, but episode 7, which I've already watched, has already come out. Fantastic, can't wait to talk about that in about 2 weeks. In episode 8, from what I've seen, I read the title of the episode. I think that's going to be really cool too. So, almost in the gallery. I'm going to have to, we'll see what I'll talk about after that. We are definitely, hopefully, going to be talking about Master and Apprentice, the Claudia Gray novel, next week. So be on the lookout for that. A nice Obi-Wan Qui-Gon adventure. And after that, episodes 7 and 8 of the gallery. And we'll see from there. I have something special planned for the week after. But I don't want to say that just in case it falls through. But yeah, so thanks everyone for listening to what I had to say this week. If you liked what you heard, you can check me out at SpicedInPod on Twitter or Instagram. The Spiced In on YouTube. All of our actually, that's big news. I forgot to say earlier. All of the podcasts are on YouTube now. You can watch them there as well. They're only, they're not video podcasts. It's just audio with, like a still image put in the background. But another option for you to, if you're not super a fan of Spotify or whatever, you can go watch it there as well. You can also find me on Patreon as The Spiced In if you want to support what I'm doing. No obligation, but I appreciate it. And yeah, if you have anything else, just let me know. I think that's it for this week. I will see you guys next week. Thanks to Graham Bull for our music. And as always, may the Force be with you.